Well, Mother, now that you're here in Ferbane once more, I'd like you to tell me a bit of history about where I came from and all about our own people and the neighbours in camp and who my grandmother was. So will you start off now and tell us a little bit?
Well, she was Mary Gagan, and she came from Rushdie, and she married John Naughton at the age of 23. He was a driver by trade at the time. That was before buses or these class came. There was none of that in it.
Only a trap and a sidecar,
Yes.
I suppose.
So that's before the railway came from Galway to Clifton.
Mm.
So when that started, my father,
You never saw your father now?
No.
You did.
he went to work on the sandpits that was laying the sand for the railway.
The railway
line.
line, yes.
So he was this day, my mother was just 3 months married, and he went out this day. And the man that had taken the contract of laying the rails should have a man on top of the sandpits as they went along.
Sort of a watchman to see.
A watchman.
Mm.
And they were supposed to give warning to the men that was lifting the sand in their carts.
If there was any danger.
And as the carts were put in, they were sinking as there was no foundation in the sandpit.
Yes.
So my father went behind the cart to give it a lift out to the horse, because when it was sinking, the wheels was going down.
Yes.
So he went back, and the horse and cart came safe, but he was smothered.
Oh.
So I was 3 months in for that time,
Yeah.
and I never seen him. 6 months later I was born.
Yes. And she lived there.
She lived on an acre of land.
With her mother-in-law and father-in-law.
Yes, and they were advanced when they got married. They had only 2 boys, and the other boy, Willie, died just a baby. So John lived until he was smothered there. So she could have gone to her people in America. All her family were out there. But she had no place to leave me, and she wouldn't leave me after her. Both her father-in-law and mother-in-law were too old. They were in their 70s. So she stayed with them and reared me.
And then they died. And how did she get to marry Mr. McDonough or Patsy
Well,
McDonough?
she done work for them. She done their washing and cleaning up when himself and his wife lived in farther up the street.
Yes.
In the same street but farther up. And they had a shop. So the wife died, and he said, I think I'll take back now to where I came from. He was a native of Ballinasloe. And I don't like to be away from where Bridget is buried. That was the wife.
Yes.
And well, says my mother, we have a big house down there. But says she, I cannot do your work anymore. People talk, which they would. And if you like, she says, you can come down and we'll give you part of our house is too big, because my father had it built to go out in it and leave the old couple in the old house.
Yes, and he'd be near enough to them just the
Yes.
same if he lived.
So, well, if you marry me, says he, we'll stop the talk. So that's the way she got it.
And they had a little shop there
He
then.
had carried on his shop business all the
Yeah.
time.
And you grew up then and you married my father, and he was from...
He was from Billamore.
Yes.
He was a carpenter by trade, and a great man to play the accordion.
And to step dance.
And he'd step dance.
And he could lilt.
He could lilt and step dance and drink a drop as good as any man.
And smoke his pipe.
And smoke his pipe. So he done some repairs in our house, and of course, I don't know, but they said he had an eye on me all the time. That's to be told. But he proposed, and Mother said it was very suitable for me. I'll be with her. So I did marry, and I reared 6 children.
And the eldest was Mary Rose.
Yeah, Mary Rose was the eldest.
And Deela.
Deela came in, and Michael came in.
And Bernie.
Bernie came in.
And me then.
And Tess came in, and Myra came in. And there was no appeal going that time. Because if there was, I wouldn't have so many on the side of the road, because work was very scarce.
Only chance work.
Chance work. He had his papers out for being a good carpenter, but there was no work. And if they got work herself, 'twas only about £2 a week. So I always done fancy work since I was 11 years.
Carrickmacross lace.
Carrickmacross lace. And I kept at the lace. And between all, and my mother used to get Christmas and Easter money from her people, her sisters in America. And we had a nice little life.
And you'd a bit of land.
And a bit of land. So we lived along. Comfortable at the time. Things were very cheap that time. You'd get a nice chop for 6pence. 12 pennies at that time.
So they got married then, Mary Rose in Crockwell.
Yes, got a big farmer, and I thought it was a hard life for her, because she was at office work in the post office. And I told her, says, I marry someone that'll give you an easy time, because farming is very hard on that side of the country. But she didn't. She said she liked him, and love is supposed to be one of the biggest things. Love or hatred, them two conquers.
So the next
thing was Delia, and she married her own choice, Andrew Darcy from Oughterard, and they reared their family. So then Michael, he married an Offaly woman. Bernie then married
What was her name?
Kitty O'Leary, and then Bernie married
One of the Lees from down.
from Pollock. And he came in for a farm of land from the Knowns, the father side. And he reared a big family.
And I came next. I went up to Offaly too.
Then my next one went up to Offaly. Tess. She married Johnny Owens. He's from Geesville.
And Myra went back to where my grandmother came from and married back in Reshna. She was the same name as
Yes.
Granny.
She was Myra and she went back to Patrick Connolly.
Well, who was the neighbour next door to you?
Oh, Mike Kersey.
Oh, yes, that's the man that used to have the apples and we used to get a few.
Yes, and he'd bring a few apples. And the biggest curse he ever said was Billy Oath and Paddy Conscience.
Yeah.
And he fished on Loch Corrib. That's what he used to do.
And he had a lame leg, I remember. How did he get that?
Oh, he got that later on in life, but he hadn't it always. He married a girl he was great with from her youth, and she went to America and made a bit of money and came home. Margaret Gill.
And that's how John Gill is in it today now.
John Gill is in it today, then. His nephew.
Oh, I see. And
And
then many no.
And he used races that time. Was 2 days in Galway.
Oh, yes.
And Tom Farty lived next door to him. And Tom went in to Jarvey the races. When the crowd is gathered, they'd stand in the square in Galway to Salt Hill are the dogs, Salt Hill are the dogs. And they brought you to Salt Hill are the dogs for 10 shillings. And they made a few pound and come home. The whole lot of them had been coming from Galway. 10 or 12 cars from Oughterard used to go in for the race week. And poor Mike Alistair used to go in with Tom's wife in the last day to be out with him. They'd have the day in the Galway races. And poor Tom Farty got a bit jarred.
One too many.
And he was driving, coming home. And Mike was one side and the wife was on the other side and he was on the decky.
Oh, yes.
The centre they used to call it. But he pulled the car against the wall and Mike's leg got caught.
And that's how he...
And the leg got broke.
Oh, I see.
So I had to step for life.
And who was next then? Where did Mrs. Jordan come in?
Mrs. Jordan then, Tom Farty built a new house down further, and Mrs. Jordan went in his old house. She was from Westmeath. Mary Ann Ward was her name.
And she married Peter Jordan.
Peter Jordan was born in Oughterard, and he lived with his mother. His father was dead. And he was a while, I think, in the industrial black and Letterfrack in his youth. But he was a great step dancer. And he married Mary Ann Ward when they were down in Galway with her people that employed her for the sea for the summer. She came down, girl, working with them.
And she was good at the dressmaking.
She was a dressmaker by trade. When she came. When she joined them, worked for them, they had a family. And she used to make all the clothes for the children and all. What they aren't doing now, they don't do so.
Oh, there's great changes, all right, but
Oh,
sure, there
great
wasn't pennies or done stores out in that time.
No, there was nothing out that time. So anyway, they went to America. And they came home after years. And there was no pensions going for them from America that time either.
No.
They came home and they'd done managers for the gentlemen around when they'd gone to England back for a holiday or thing. They'd go out and stay in the house, look after it and keep it in order while they were away. Then they'd come back to our house where we rented to them. And they stayed there then, and she'd dressmake again.
And who was next to Mrs. Jordan then?
Mum O'Donnell, who used to call her.
Was it not, where did Nellie,
Nellie Fairty was in it.
And
That
Mary Ann.
Tom's daughter.
And Mary Ann.
And Mary Ann.
Mary Ann was Tom's sister.
Yes. Tom married and lived in the next house. And she lived with her father. They lived in Tullaverick. And when they used to be Jarvine, they all came over to be near the town.
Oh, yes.
There was more
business and trade in the town, yeah.
You get more call.
Yes.
And Mary Ann was there.
So she took in Nellie when he married?
Yes, when he was married, and as the children was growing up, she'd take him on until it was fit to go to America. That one went to America. But Nellie had stayed with her.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest went to America.
Well, then there was Mum O'Maher. Donlan, yeah.
She was next. And Mum O'Donnell was married to a butcher by trade. But his father before him was a butcher, Johnny Donlan. Johnny had Patsy one son, Jack two sons, James another, and James O'Neill, I think he had another one.
And where
Really?
And you were friends with Maggie, was
I was. And I was in this patch then worked in Rise where the mother worked. As he grew up and he went to school, but he was a self-taught man. His mother was a wonderful Irish speaker. She had more Irish than she had English. And he came out to be an Irish teacher. And he went over to Umlicady where the college was. And he met De Valera, Eamon De Valera in it. And he brought him over to meet his mother because De Valera was interested in Irish. So he brought her over this day. He brought him over this day, and I came in. And Maggie was my chum. And she says, "Do you know who's in the room with Pádraig?" "Who?" says I. "Eamon De Valera." Well, she hadn't it said when I was out. And I landed home. Because I didn't know him and I wasn't acquainted with him. So he stayed that night and they went over again, crossed. And Pádraig married Father Flanagan's sister. And Father Flanagan's father was a tailor in Dublin. He had a great business. He employed people and he had owned the daughter Sinead. She married to Valera. And the priest, two in family.
And there was another old man down there, Ali Carr, where he was a great man for the history too.
Oh, he was an old man. I'd say he came with some Protestant family to Old Chapel. And he came up from Old Chapel to camp to live with his father and his mother and his brother. And he was a gardener by trade. And he used to come up to the big stone. There was a big stone out in the wall.
At Finnerty's.
Finerty Stone we used to call it, Bartle Finerty Stone. He'd come up every evening and my mother, my Carrotty and Mum O'Donnell would sit there.
And I used to be up with them too, listening to them chat.
And all the children were together around them to hear them talking.
Well, they were great times, weren't they?
They were not too bad, but no one had anything better than the other. We were all in the one level.
Grand old simple ways.
Very simple.
And
But,
great religion and fasting.
I remember when Bid McDonough and Coleman McDonough lived out in Liam. That's 5 miles from Oughterard. She'd get up every morning for 8 o'clock mass. Hail, rain or storm. Come down fasting when she'd was going to receive. And the rain shaking out her cloak, her shawl, when she'd come to the chapel. And she'd shake it out side to side and go in, kneel down and receive, and walk back the 4 miles or 5 again.
And all the women had shawls that time.
That they had
Some of
the
them
Galway shawl of grey.
And some of them black. And some of them paisley.
Paisley.
Yeah.
Well, when they got married long ago in Oughterard, you weren't a respectable woman if you hadn't a mantle and
A clad a ring.
a clad a ring and a paisley shawl put inside it. That you were respectable then. Otherwise you were only a tinker. And when my mother got married, she was only a few days married, when my grandmother said to him, "Now, John, you must go into Galway and get a mantle for Mariah, and a clad a ring, and a paisley shawl, and then she'll be respectable."
And you saw troubled times too. What about the time when you were evicted? Or how?
Oh, the time between Ireland and England. There's a nice hour that time, well. Little Michael, my youngest, he was the youngest at the time, was only about a week old when the trouble came between the Fianna Fáil and the Fine Gael. And they were expecting a raid. The Fianna Fáils were expecting a raid from Hertford. So they got big blocks of trees, put them across the road at our gable. And it took our gable, and we were put out, and we had to go down to Mum O'Donnell's for that night. No raid came, but that didn't save us. My husband stayed in the house, that's all was in it. He said, if anything comes of any trouble, I can hop in or hop out. But the children and myself had to go out. So that's what. But I remember afterwards then, when they used to have dances with the Fine Gael when they won. The Republic was put out and they left any amount of debt to be paid. And the Fine Gael came in and there was as much bills into them, whether they were taken or not. They demanded payment. They had to put good price on everything in shops and all to try to meet all. When it was cleared up again, the Fianna Fáil won and knocked them out. And I remember in the Fine Gael time, and I was on the Fine Gael time that time, I used to take the what I call them now, papers they used to have for the winning the elections,
yes.
election papers, and I used to distribute them on the road. And so the people would take them off as they were coming. And I often went down as far as the old chapel with them.
You did.
And came up again. And I remember Johnny was coming from working at the minister's, and he had a saw on his tool bag and was out that way. And what I would call them from England was going around.
Black and tans.
The black and tans was going around. And they used to put the shot over his head, thinking it was a gun, do you know.
So times are as bad as they are today in Ireland.
There was very bad times.
There's always violence there.
And thing. But when I remember when there was a raid on John Gagan's house.
And where did John Gagan live now?
He lived in my Cullen.
Oh, yeah.
A bit outside my Cullen. He was a cousin of your father's. And there was a raid over in Ballinasloe side. And he was supposed to be in that hold up. So he was told by the Irish at the time that they were to come, the black and tans was to come for him this night. And the two younger brothers said, "You go now tonight, John. There's a raid on this house tonight." "Well, if I went," he says, "one of ye'd be taken. And as they put me down for it, I'll stand my ground. As long as they'll take me from the door and not to shoot them before my mother. That's all I care about, and that's all that's troubling me." So when he heard the knock come to the door that night, and they were all in the kitchen, the two brothers and himself and the mother. "This is for me now," says he, walking out. And the mother heard it, and she went out to the door with him. And she said to them, what's bringing you here?" "Leave the way, woman," says they. "Is John there?" John stepped out. "I'm here," says he. "But bring me now," says he, "down the road. Don't shoot me before my mother." They'd done nothing but threw the gun opposite his mother and shot him.
So that was a sad sight for her to see.
She had never done a day's good till she died. And the brothers lived there, but it nearly killed one of them. The other fellow went to England, a carpenter. But there were times.
There were hard times.